Hey friends, welcome to episode 482 of the My 123 Cents podcast. Admittedly, this is a show I thought I was going to be doing solo. I did not think Chad would want to talk about Taylor Swift, about the NFL. Well, maybe not the NFL, but Travis Kelce, the Super Bowl, all of that. It's happening this weekend. We are recording on Saturday, the day before, so we don't know how things are going to end, even though if you're part of the conspiracy theorists that think that the whole thing is scripted and that the Chiefs are going to win, we don't know. So putting that out there first, but we're recording this for a couple reasons. Yes, we're jumping on the Swiftie bandwagon, and two, it is Valentine's Day week. So Valentine's Day is Wednesday, of course. The show will drop on Monday morning, bright and early. So we encourage you to check it out, listen, download, share, leave a review, whether it's on YouTube or whatever podcasting app you listen to. Now that I've got that out of the way, Chad Smart is here with us. And Chad, before we get into our Taylor Swift wrestling, WWE, AEW talk, let's talk about current stuff. The past week or so, I think the Vince McMahon controversy has simmered, and I'm not saying that that's not going to flare up again and be minimized. We're not minimizing that at all, but really want to talk about product information and stuff. Let's start off with WWE. Of course, they held the big WrestleMania press conference on Thursday. I was on the road most of the day Thursday.
Road to WrestleMania?
I was not on the. I wish I was on the road to WrestleMania. I was on the road to getting my arm checked out, which I am going to be okay. I'm fine. I will not need any kind of surgery, maybe some physical therapy, but I digress. But I'm saying all that to say is I was not in tune with social media, and it wasn't until after 10 o'clock Central Time that I got home and saw what actually happened at the press conference. And I'm a little surprised because I think I did buy into, I got caught up in the wave of everybody thinking that that Cody was going to end up facing, or I'm sorry, that Roman was going to end up facing The Rock at WrestleMania. And we've learned now that that's not the case. Now, there are those conspiracy theorists out there who say that claim
it's Taylor Swift's fault, yes.
That it's Taylor Swift's fault, but that that wasn't the plan, that they called an audible and they changed it. I'm in the belief that this was the original intent. This was the story going forward. I can't imagine they would completely shift gears on the biggest storyline, some would say in wrestling history, versus just to appease the fan base. So what are your thoughts?
Well, my first thought would be, do you remember WrestleMania 30?
I do, but I'm saying that to say I do think WrestleMania 30 was a shift, but this whole thing happened in a matter of 2 weeks. I don't know that they would shift gears that quick and change the story that quick. I don't know that it was ever intended to be Roman versus The Rock at WrestleMania, but I don't know.
I don't know either. So my theories are going to be conspiracy theories because I prefer to live in that world of conspiracy. Bigfoot exists, Loch Ness Monster is real, and well, the government's proven that aliens exist as well.
Yeah.
But if this was the plan, I don't think they've done it well.
Okay.
And that's mainly because having Cody win the Rumble and then come out on SmackDown and say, I'm stepping away, and The Rock is going to take over. And then Cody comes out like the following week and says, like, oh no, this is BS. I'm taking it's like the shift is too dramatic, too drastic in such a short time to make me think that. And part of me would say also maybe it is planned because allegedly at Raw in St. Louis on Monday, WWE was handing out "We Want Cody" signs, to make it seem like that. In that regard, I did watch the press conference on Thursday, and I was shocked more at the lack of "We Want Cody" chants. Now, if this was expected to be kind of like the follow-up to the Yes movement, where the fans are dictating what they want, I mean, it was pretty, I would say, pretty evenly split between "We Want Cody," "We Want Rock," "We Want Snooki." I don't, the ground, and even watching SmackDown, the night before we record this, there wasn't a huge, from what I saw in the first 75 minutes of the show, there was not a huge "We Want Cody," dominance like we saw with the Yes movement, like even with, I think with Kofi Mania, a few years ago. So, and I've read reports that this was the plan, that they wanted to make Cody look more like an underdog
Hmm.
and have him come out. I don't know where we're going on this Ridge Race. What we'll end up with? Will it be a triple threat? Will it be The Rock with Roman with The Rock in his corner? Will Rock be a special enforcer? I don't know. What my takeaway from the press conference though was the tribal chief is bowing down to The Rock, because The Rock was front and center. The Rock was the main focus, and I mean, I think that could add a layer of intrigue into the whole bloodline feud. And as I said on the last time that I was on the show, I think the bloodline feud overshadows the Cody story. And I don't think, again, I don't think Cody Roman is the way to go.
So, and we're going to do a WrestleMania show when we get closer to the event. Now, I looked at my calendar real quick here. We have 8 more Raws, 8 more SmackDowns, and of course, Elimination Chamber before we get to WrestleMania. I think that, like I said on a YouTube video that I made earlier in the week, there's still a lot of time for things to change. And unfortunately, there's also time for injuries and things like that to happen too. So, even though
Mhm.
we're seemingly on this Roman and Cody path, we're not locking it in yet. I think I'm going to make a prediction now. As this show drops on February 12th, I am saying that somehow, somewhere along the way, Roman is going to get screwed and come out of WrestleMania as a baby face, not the
Mhm.
baby face. And SummerSlam, we're going to get the tribal chief on the line match between Rock and Roman, and Rock is going to be the heel.
Mhm.
Because I feel like the seeds have been planted for The Rock, slapping Cody, the things he said on the Pat McAfee show, basically insulting the fans. And I think The Rock, even though he's one of those guys that, yeah, I would love to sit down and have a beer with, I also think he can be an asshole. And I think that he will play that up. And especially if he's going to be around and be a part of TKO. I don't think he has to wrestle at
Mhm.
WrestleMania. I think Cody. I hope Cody finishes the story one, so we move on and get to
Mhm.
something else. But also, I think that because I had read a report a long time ago that somebody was predicting that Roman is going to end up getting a face turn out of the whole
Mhm.
bloodline thing, and I think, like you just said, Rock was front and center the other night at the press conference. So to me, I that's where I'm at right now. I don't know. Obviously, none of us know where we're headed, but I don't think we need the title on the line between
Mhm.
Rock and Roman. Like you said, it's the tribal chief stuff. There's no reason for Roman to beat Hulk Hogan's record because it's third place. You know what I'm saying? Who cares about third place? So I hope Cody wins just for the sake of kind of putting some of this to bed and then furthering the story with Rock and Roman and the bloodline. But then I also don't want the champion, if it is Cody, to kind of get lost in the shuffle. I feel like that kind of happened with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens when they beat the Usos for the tag team
Mhm.
titles. And then that all kind of, you know, disintegrated or seemingly did so. So,
Well, yeah, and in that regard, real quick, to tie this back into the Super Bowl. So the San Francisco 49ers are
mhm,
playing in the Super Bowl. Their
mhm.
quarterback is Brock Purdy, who is Mr. Irrelevant, which, are you familiar with that term?
Of course.
I mean, not just because in your life, but in the football sense, he was the last person drafted 2 or 3 years ago. So they call that person Mr. Irrelevant.
Okay.
Well, I think in WWE, that nickname should be bestowed upon Seth freaking Rollins,
Mm,
who, even though he is champion, has been had his legs cut out by Roman in his promos about how that title means nothing.
yeah.
And even on that press conference, when Seth came out, by the time Cody and Roman and Rock came out, Seth might as well have been holding a microphone pretending to be Byron Sexton, because no one cares about that title. No one cares about Seth Rollins at this point when in context of this feud. So, um, if that is the workhorse championship, like I would even say that that title is below the intercontinental title at the moment, given
Oh,
Gunther's
mm,
reign of terror.
yeah.
So I'm just throwing out the Mr. Irrelevant
Yeah.
line. I want to get a little dig on Seth Rollins since he refused to take a photo with us at WrestleMania 28. That's the story I'm
23.
sticking to. 23, yeah, the one that I'm sticking to.
Um, yeah, it is an interesting factor with him and being involved with this. And I wonder how much of that has to do with CM Punk's injury
Hmm.
because they are scrambling, obviously, because I think a lot of people thought or assumed that we were going to get Punk versus Rollins and,
Hmm.
Cody. So, and that's where I said earlier, we're 8 weeks away still, or, about before we get to WrestleMania. So, the injury bug can happen, or whatever else is out there that could potentially uh, threaten matches and main events, and all of this that's going on. Who would you pick for Seth Rollins to wrestle right now? Because there's not really. I've got. I'll say who I'm thinking. Uh, I think it should be Drew McIntyre. I
Yeah, I
would
mean, with the way the story's going, with
Yeah,
yeah,
and I would love to see Drew. I think Drew was another example of like what Cody did and what Zack Ryder or Matt Cardona is doing currently. He left the machine and went out and made a name for himself, kind of on his own, self-made. Cody definitely self-made. Matt Cardona self-made. I know, back when Drew did it, there wasn't as much of the indie scene, and he did get the rub in TNA and came back better than ever. But then he wins the belt during the COVID era. No one's there to give him that WrestleMania moment. So I would love for Drew to kind of get some of that back and doing it 4 years later at this year's WrestleMania, even though you have said, and I think, and I don't disagree with you, the diminishment of the championship, because while I think maybe people view it as, well, Roman's putting down Seth and he's being a heel, he's really putting down the championship and then anyone that
mhm.
wrestles for or holds that title in the future.
Yeah, I agree that Roman's promos at the press conference and on SmackDown have basically said like that is just for people who can't beat me, and it's so whoever wins that title, then in the eyes of the fan, are they seen as lesser than because it is a title that was was basically created because no one can beat Roman.
Hmm.
You know, real quick with the press conference too. Speaking of CM Punk, he was there doing like the roundtable
Yeah,
discussion. I don't know if you saw any of his clips,
I did.
but after it was all over, after The Rock had slapped Cody and
Hmm.
they went back to the table, Punk is like you got to step up. Your boss slaps you, you got to punch it. And it was like basically everything that he was saying. If you know the backstory of AEW, it's like, okay, he's, you know, um, we're just waiting for Jungle Jack Perry to come out and, you know, but
Now,
I do think,
let me ask you this though:
yeah,
do you think that is Punk, or is that WWE, or is it a combination of both?
I think it's Punk.
Yeah.
I think Punk is smart enough to know and has enough self awareness to you know his story and the fans reaction,
Yeah.
um and I guess Big E was there too, and I didn't catch the beginning of the show, but I did see that Big E said that he was just there to make sure CM Punk didn't get fined. And um after that, if neither, while Punk is out injured and whether or not Big E comes back, is able to come back and wrestle, or if he wants to, but I would buy into a commentary team of Big E and Punk.
Really?
Yeah,
I'll have to go back and watch. Is it on the? Did they stream that on the network or on Peacock?
it's on the cock. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll have to get my cock out later and take a look. Anything else you want to talk about on the road to WrestleMania? We're gonna, and just as a
Mm.
preface, I've actually done some planning ahead for the next several weeks. So next week here on the pod, we're going to talk. Chad's going to join me again. We're going to talk about authority figures since it is falling on President's Day. More specifically, Tony Khan. Should he become an authority figure more so than he is now? So we'll get into a deeper conversation on AEW and things going on there. We're also going to talk about last matches coming up, wrestlers who should have gotten a last match in light of Sting's last match coming up, and of course some of the other things going on. Music Mania is going to come back. Movie Mania will make a comeback. So things are being planned and worked out
Mm.
right now. And we want to hear your input as well. Let us know, what are your thoughts on authority figures in pro wrestling? Are they still relevant? We know, we've got Adam Pearce and uh, Nick Aldis on the WWE side of things.
Mm.
Scott D'Amore recently released from TNA. So we'll talk all about that next week's show, but we want to hear your insight and get your opinions as well before we do that. Chad, anything else about WrestleMania current day stuff before we
Yeah,
dive into our other talk?
I mean, I'll ask now so that I don't forget when we get closer to Mania. But it was announced that the weekend has the theme song to WrestleMania for the fifth straight year.
Wow.
And my question to you is, can you name 5 songs by The Weekend?
No.
Can
And
you name one
crazy.
song?
I couldn't even spell the weekend correctly. So he did what was what's the big song he's got? It's like
I
I
the only
couldn't even tell you the name of it. I could sing it, and I'm not
uh,
going to though.
the only one I know is Blinding Lights because Fozzy recently covered it on the Jera Cruise, and
Oh.
there's video of that of people making fun of. I mean, if you wanna sing it, I'm sure you can do about as good a job as Jericho was doing that night, so
I'd be curious to know, and I'm sure there's research out there, or someone is in the know, how they come up with those uh, musical theme songs. And,
mm,
and part of Music Mania coming up is we're going to talk about commercial music's influence on pro wrestling, and how Vince McMahon and later WCW and I say Vince McMahon, WWF, WWE, uh, WCW, and then now even AEW has turned to their own composers, so they own that music. So we're going to talk more about that on a future Music Mania in the next couple of weeks too. So
mm,
be ready for that. Chad, it is Super Bowl weekend, as we mentioned, and as you're listening to this, the Super Bowl is behind us. Maybe
mm,
you're.
wait, I gotta stop you. Did you get permission from the NFL to use the term Super Bowl, or are we gonna have to say the big game to
Oh yeah,
avoid lawsuit?
it's on this email here. So
Okay,
they
okay.
said it's okay. They said it's
I'm
okay.
just looking out for you. I don't want,
Yeah,
Clarence Mason to come in and have to.
yeah, I'll have to call Mike Clarence Mason to get in here. Okay, I will. You do make a good point, because there are legalities around the SB term, and I don't know what is okay and safe to say on.
I think it's promotion more or less, like, you can't.
That's what I. So yeah, the cat or the write up for this podcast will not have it in it, and I won't, because I remember in the news, there
Mhm,
were restrictions where we couldn't say Super Bowl on promos that we were doing. We'd have to
mm.
say the big game. So I'm waiting for the NFL to copyright the big game now too, and then take
Yeah,
that away.
well, and I think you should just say the NFL's WrestleMania.
Yeah, there you go. And that is where I want to kind of draw the first comparisons. Did a little bit of research. So according to WWE's website, their press release, in last year, and I'm just doing 2023 numbers. Last year's WrestleMania had a worldwide, and of course, this is a worldwide entity, and of course, with WrestleMania, it's streaming, so it's more on demand, where you can go back and look. And I don't know where they did the cutoff. This was not live viewers, but this was 500 million views worldwide of WrestleMania 39. It also set a gate record of 21.6 million. Chad and I were there for that. And then a sponsorship record was set of over $20 million. Last year's Super Bowl, which was the Chiefs versus the Eagles, 114.956 million um, people watched that. Um, and I couldn't figure out all the sponsorship stuff. So they said
Mm.
the economic impact, of course, is great for both WrestleMania and for um, the Super Bowl. That's where, when we were growing up watching WrestleMania, it was like, okay, it's in Indianapolis, or it's in Chicago, or it's in Madison Square Garden. Um, and now cities, probably for the last 20 years, cities have bid and tried to get it because of the economic impact. And now with it being 2 nights, we've talked before about how WrestleMania kind of opens those doors for other indie promotions to come in. When we went to that first WrestleMania in Chicago almost 20 years ago, we saw Ring of Honor, and we saw uh, Did we go to any other indie shows? But there were other events going on.
No,
On
I mean, I think Ring of Honor was the only one that was running that weekend because that
well,
was before the WrestleMania weekend really became WrestleMania
WrestleMania
week,
week.
basically. Yeah.
Now the NFL, I don't think it's as obviously the Super Bowl is a big deal, but I don't think it becomes Super Bowl week, at least for many fans. But
No. Yeah,
it's
the
in
XFL
Vegas.
hasn't showed up yet to run games.
It's in Vegas. Have you ever thought about? You've talked about going to the Super Bowl before, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to attend a Super Bowl at some point, and I have yet to have. Let me try that again. I have yet to have gone to anything at the Vegas football stadium. So I would have liked to, but um, once they announced Usher was the halftime performance, my interest kind of dropped because I would, if I want to go, I want to see somebody that I want to see and
Yeah,
that I'm familiar with. And I couldn't name you two Usher songs off the top of my head.
right.
Um, if the Dolphins ever make it there, then I will pay whatever I have to go see it because I know that will be my only chance to see the Dolphins in a Super Bowl. The rest of the time, I'm going to be hanging out with Hootie, crying in the corner because the Dolphins make us cry because they are not a good team. But I mean, I've got a couple of connections with people that work the NFL or work the Super Bowl, and so I've tried using those in the past. But right now, I think the cheapest ticket they said for to get into the stadium for the Super Bowl is like $10,000.
Wow.
So, um, yeah, that's you know, eh, and I think, with Taylor Swift being there, it's driving the prices up because obviously she's going to be taking the first kickoff and probably celebrating on the field afterwards. And so people want to see that. But no, I would like to see a Super Bowl, but um, even though it's in Vegas, I will not be. I kind of wish, I'd played it out better because AEW is in the Vegas suburbs tonight as we record for Collision. So would have liked to have gone up for that show, but the Super Bowl itself, it's two teams I don't really have an interest in. So
And you would have
I
been
won't
on first name basis with everyone at that AEW show by the time it was over. So that would no, cheap dig. I shouldn't have said that.
uh,
So, you mentioned Taylor Swift, and that's kind of the point of this week's
yeah.
podcast is, and I had originally pitched this to you as, Taylor Swift dating a WWE superstar and how things would change. And I came up with this idea because my, and I still can't, I tell people this and they kind of don't believe me, but my wife was not a football fan and she was not a Swiftie. But for whatever reason, this Taylor Swift Travis Kelce dynamic has made her a fan of both. And so, and not just of the Chiefs, although for the first time in our 32 years together, we have one of these in our house. And she will wear this to the Super Bowl party that we're attending. For those listening, it is a Fanatics Kansas City Chiefs jersey. Still a little bitter with Fanatics because they didn't accept my application for affiliateship, but I'm going to try again. But I'm saying all that to say is there has been an impact. My son, who wagers on things on I think DraftKings has even made a Swifties section for people to make wagers on games. We watch Monday Night Football here. We watch Sunday afternoons. The games are on all day. So um, my wife listens to the New Heights podcast, which is the Kelsey Brothers, which is up for podcast of the year. I learned yesterday as I sat and listened to it on the way there, and they have a great dynamic. And you know, there has obviously been an influence from Taylor Swift on the NFL, and I'm going to go through those numbers real quick too. Specifically, after that first week or two in September, when we saw not Travis, God, Taylor Swift at the Chiefs game, Kelsey sales of jerseys went up 400%. The NFL set a record of 17.9 million viewers on average for this past season. That tied the second highest average since they were being tracked back in 1995. and that 17.9 million is up 7% from the 2022 season. So obviously, I'm not saying that she has been the golden goose, but there have been a lot of people who are now watching this game that weren't watching before,
Mhm.
and I think that she can be credited with some of that. So the question is had she chose Roman Reigns, and I joke with my wife, I wish, and I know Roman's married, he's the example I use though. I wish that Taylor Swift would have dated Roman Reigns because we'd be sitting here watching Raw instead of Monday Night Football. We really wouldn't because we don't stream Raw or we don't have Raw on streaming yet. But next year at this time we will.
Yeah, but the difference is Travis shows up for every game. Roman shows up like once every 3 months. So
That's true. That's true. That is a good point. But do you feel like a celebrity like that, and Taylor Swift, I think, is in a kind of a league of her own, um, in those terms, because we have seen celebrity influence in wrestling. I think Mike Tyson really
mhm.
spiced things up for the Attitude Era and kind of got WWE out of the doldrums that they were facing in 1998, and really kind of pulled the trigger on the Attitude Era. Could a celebrity's influence like that today, in the personal life aspect of a superstar, whether AEW or WWE,
Mhm.
could they make an impact, do you think? No pun intended.
Yeah. Well, first off, let me get my Swifty credentials stated out of the way. I have seen Taylor Swift in concert 3 times.
Really?
You
I
didn't
did
know
not
that?
know that.
Yeah. Yeah. The first time I saw her, I showed up the day of the show, got a seventh row seat on the floor for $70.
Wow.
This last tour, I couldn't get in the stadium for less than 1,000. So, and the first time I saw her was at what was then Staples Center, which
Mhm.
is, a basketball arena,
Yeah.
and now she's playing football stadiums. So,
Wow.
yes, but I say that, but I would not consider myself a Swiftie. Like, I think I have one of her albums on CD somewhere downloaded, but I don't know anything beyond the hit, and I don't think I've heard anything off the last 3 or 4 albums.
Mhm.
But she puts on a really good show, and I would recommend anybody that, um, has a chance to see her, go see her. The Eras tour will be streaming on Disney Plus, not a sponsor, next month. So
Oh,
if you
really?
missed it in theaters, you can watch it there. And um, but I do think, I know there's a lot of um, news articles, internet articles, whatever, about people hating on Taylor Swift because of the NFL or her
Mhm.
association with them. And I don't know. From my vantage point, it's not. I don't. I mean, I think there are probably people that are hating on her because they're idiots, but I think it's more of how the media has made Taylor Swift the focus of the NFL season.
Mhm.
And, where they have to cut to, every time Travis Kelce does a play, they have to cut to her in the stands. I don't know if they cut to Brittany Mahomes in the stands every time Patrick Mahomes makes a good play. Um, so I think more of it is kind of the um, snake eating its tail focus of the media, where the media creates a story and then talks about people complaining about what the story is, even though it's a fabrication made by the
Mhm.
media. If that makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, personally, I do find that how many people I have seen wearing Chiefs gears or wearing, like, you just brought up your wife is wearing Kelsey jersey.
Mhm.
I saw on Facebook, a friend of mine, her daughters are wearing Let's Go Taylor's Boyfriend shirts. It's that part scares me because of the influence that Taylor Swift has over people.
Mhm.
You know, um, so like if she comes out and says, "Hey, do X," and people are like, "Yes, I will do it because Taylor says so." If she starts telling me to drink Kool-Aid and move to Guyana, I'm gonna be really concerned. But as far as Taylor herself, I don't see a problem with her. I mean, I will be honest. I think the relationship is more promotional than legitimate because this Travis Kelce has nothing in common with any of her previous boyfriends. Um,
Well, maybe that's why they're previous boyfriends.
and that could be true. And it could be something. And he set out, I remember hearing before they when probably that they were dating, that he showed up at one of her concerts with a friendship bracelet with his phone number on it that he was trying to get to her. Like, it just seems so kind of
Mm.
like, I mean, if someone showed up if I was doing a show and someone showed up with their phone number on a bracelet trying to get to me, I think I would probably be more cautious than anything. But that's not true. I would be like, hell yes, because I'm desperate. Don't tell my girlfriend. But it just like, and given all the publicity that the NFL has gotten, and I'm cynical. So
Right, right.
I don't, I think we'll see if the Chiefs lose the Super Bowl, how quickly that relationship fades out. And how, I mean, I know Taylor just announced a new album coming out in a month, so that's not going to have the Travis Kelce songs on it. But how soon till the next album with the Travis Kelce breakup songs? I don't know. I'm rambling here. What was your initial question? Yes, I picked the Chiefs by 15 over the Niners.
So, do you think though that
Oh
because
yeah.
one thing that I learned actually before all of this started, Jeff Jarrett, when his kids were young,
Hmm.
and Jeff Jarrett lives in Nashville or the Nashville area. Taylor was also in the Nashville area.
Hmm.
She was, and there are pictures of it. She babysat the Jarrett
Yeah.
daughters back in the day. I'm mildly surprised, and maybe she's obviously a megastar now and whatnot. I'm surprised no one has tried to cash in on that celebrity or that connection in AEW with Taylor. And actually, Ethan Page was on Tony Schiavone's podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he said, "I wish that Wardlow would have asked Taylor Swift out instead of Travis Kelce because." I think even wrestlers, tongue in cheek, recognize kind of the rub, so to speak, that their company or their promotion or the industry would get. If this were Taylor Swift dating an AEW guy or a WWE guy,
Mhm.
it would the attention be there? Obviously with the NFL, the media is covering it and whatnot, and I still think that wrestling, especially with the whole Vince McMahon scenario right now, wrestling has that stigma to it is still. So would I guess, and this is going to be a knock against wrestling fans who
Mhm.
are mostly living in their mom's basement and bitching about what is going on WWE. But those that do have significant others,
Mhm.
you mentioned your girlfriend, my wife, would they start watching or being more, involved or engaged
Yeah.
in the show if Taylor Swift were sitting in a box at Raw and they would cut to her when, say, Austin Theory is her boyfriend, and Austin comes out and wins. And I'll get to another question in a minute about celebrities who have dated superstars or been married to. But do you think that wrestling would go that direction? Because if she's dating a lower tiered guy,
Mhm.
does that guy then start to get a rub or get a push because of that? Say instead of Samantha Irvin, Ricochet was dating Taylor Swift.
Mhm.
Ricochet's a great superstar, but he's mid card at best. Would he be wrestling at WrestleMania if the WWE thought more Swifties would buy tickets or come
But then
to the shows?
yeah, and I think, that's one of the differences between wrestling and other sports is, with Travis Kelce, he's out there every other play or every other, whenever the Chiefs have the ball. So let's say if a football game lasts 3 hours, he's probably on camera for a little over an hour.
Hmm.
And so they can constantly talk to him. In wrestling, if he's only out there during his match, and if it's on Raw, he may only be on TV for 15 minutes, let's say. So would it take away from everyone else on the show if Taylor Swift was there and they kept talking about Taylor Swift and cutting to Taylor Swift either in the crowd or, in a luxury box? Um, so I think in that regard, I don't think it would work
Hmm.
for, but I do think if she was dating someone, it again, depending on how high profile the female is, or I guess male if they're dating a female wrestler.
Yeah.
You know, I think because we live in a celebrity driven world,
Yeah.
unfortunately, that yes, you're going to get more attention. I say that, although, and you probably going to bring this up in a bit, but you know, well, I guess it also depends on if they go public with the relationship. Because I was thinking when Dolph Ziggler was dating Amy Schumer, like I don't think that news broke out until after the relationship
I
was
still
over.
can't believe that either, by the way. But
Yeah. Um, so and Amy Schumer never showed up at a wrestling show, as far
yeah,
as we know.
yeah.
Um, you know, I mean, really, the only trying to think, and it's not even dating related, but I'm trying to think of celebrities that have shown up at shows, and it's at WrestleMania, at SummerSlam, at your big shows, you'll see,
Sure.
and especially if they're here in LA, people
Yeah.
will show up. But I don't know. It's interesting because I don't think,
Well, the couple I was going to talk about
yeah,
is David Otunga and Jennifer Hudson. Um,
who?
what did you say?
I
Who?
said who?
And that's my point. Because I feel like I don't ever remember seeing Jennifer Hudson at any of WWE event. Even
Yeah.
like WrestleMania or anything like that. And David Otunga obviously was never main event status, obviously, and was more mid card to lower card, and then was commentary, and then on panels and stuff, and
Mhm.
uh, quickly faded away. But I feel like there was a time or two where he would name drop her, but I don't think you know I can't think of any other instance where there's been something like that. And so would WWE, and maybe they put maybe her reps and her people put stipulations or things
Mhm.
out there that said, she can't be a part of this or promote this or do that or get physical or do I don't know. And I
Yeah.
wonder if the same would be said because as we said, they do cut to the NFL cuts to shots of Taylor. And by the way, I Colin Coward on his show talked about this, and I think the most camera time she got in any given 3 hour game was just over 1 minute throughout the duration of the game.
Mm.
So it's not like she's on all the time. But like to your point as well, you the superstar is not going to be unless she's dating Michael Cole and sitting out there watching him do commentary.
Yeah.
There's no other person that's a part of the show as much uh, as a football player would be, for
No.
example. So yeah, I tend to agree with you in that regard that it wouldn't be the same. But I wonder then on the personal life aspect, if Dolph
Yeah.
Ziggler had a podcast back in the day when he was dating Amy Schumer, would more people tune in and listen and want to hear? But I think
Mm.
even though Taylor Swift has become a little polarizing to some, I think Amy Schumer is
Mhm.
very polarizing
Yeah.
and would not be as well received, I think, by the WWE.
Yeah, I mean, now, yes. I
Yeah,
think when, during their time when they were dating, I think she was more, because she is someone that, I mean, I see billboards for her new show on Hulu.
mm,
Um, and that's like the most that I've heard about Amy Schumer in like the last 5 years. And,
uh-huh.
I mean, I went and saw her perform 7, 8 years ago. And
Hmm.
that was like when she was at the height of her popular, and then she just kind of vanished. And I know there's been some allegations, some situations of like joke stealing and
Yeah.
whatnot. But she's just she's someone who was really popular and then just kind of gone, and they moved on. Um, I will say real quick, talking about the shots of Taylor Swift during the game. Um, I want you. You said you're going to a Super Bowl party, so I want you to do me a favor. Since I don't drink anymore, I want you to do a shot every time they show a shot of Taylor, and then post a YouTube video after the game to show how.
See how inebriated I am.
Yes. Um, but I was thinking back when Pamela Anderson showed up at WrestleMania 10 and 11,
Hmm.
and she wasn't dating. I think they tried to insinuate there was something between her and Shawn Michaels or her and
Yeah.
Kevin Nash. And granted, obviously, that's 30 years ago. Times have changed. TMZ wasn't around at that point. The internet was just in its infancy, you know, would that have been a bigger deal today if that had happened? You know, or if at that time, if things were like they are today. And I'm, you know, I would think that WWE got her because of her popularity and because trying to get some Main Street pub. And so I'm trying to think, you know, who other than Taylor Swift would, you know, would this work with today? And
Well, and I wonder too, because looking at the numbers for WrestleMania, for example,
Mhm.
and we've talked about this in the past. WrestleMania tickets go on sale in what, October,
September, October,
November,
yeah.
September, the previous, the year before the event.
Mhm.
And most of the time, they don't completely sell out, but they sell enough that, like you've said before, it could be Barry Horowitz versus Paul Roma as the main event.
I'd buy
But,
it.
but people are already locked in because they've
Yeah.
bought, because nowadays it doesn't need Hulkamania or the Macho Man or Ric Flair to
Mhm.
sell the card. The card is selling on the brand alone.
Yeah.
And NFL, obviously is a bit of a different animal, but I think WWE and NFL are similar in that they are both at the high level here in the United States and they are expanding globally. Obviously,
Mhm.
WWE with, I think right now there are three premium live events, PLEs, formerly known as pay-per-views, that are being held outside of the United States this year. Uh, they're going to Germany, they're going to Australia, as we mentioned, for Elimination Chamber. I think Money in the Bank is in.
France.
Okay, and then there's an event in Canada
I
as
think,
well.
or London, wherever the Olympics are,
Yeah.
because it's like right during the Olympics time.
So there are, several. So obviously they are trying to make that global footprint even bigger
Mhm.
than it is. And the NFL has been playing games in London for the last couple of years. The Major League Baseball has been doing the same thing.
Mhm.
So I guess I'm saying all this to say is, you know, have these companies, have these franchises reached a limit here in the United States where we're not going to necessarily draw in new fans. So let's, if this whole Taylor Swift thing is a
Mhm.
publicity stunt, so to speak, to bring in viewership on a global level, because she's in Japan as we are recording this for her concert tour. She was in South America during part of the NFL season and was going back and forth. Travis went there and watched her perform. So as these, WWE has been global for years, but really, I feel like in the last year or two, and especially with the Saudi Arabia stuff, which is a whole nother controversial issue,
Mhm.
but um, they're reaching worldwide audiences, and again, it's not just a performer; it is the brand itself that is the brand, that is the selling point. You know,
Mhm.
AEW, I think globally with the UK event last year, and I guess they're coming back again this year.
Are they?
Sales are doing better there than they are doing here in the States. So, how important is that global impact, and then having that kind of celebrity push behind it?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think the global impact obviously is important because, as you mentioned with AEW, you know, if they can do 70,000, 80,000 people for a one-off show in
Hmm.
England or Europe, anywhere, you know, it beats the 1,500 fans they're drawing in, you know, for their TV shows.
Hmm.
And I'll talk with more about you off air with you about it. I have something that I read recently that made sense to me, um, but yeah, the global impact. I mean, because you want fans everywhere, and you know, especially with WrestleMania, where you know there's I don't want to say there's talk, but people want WrestleMania to be held outside of America.
Sure.
But for being in America, the amount of people that come to America for WrestleMania
Hmm.
is, you know, I mean, we've seen it ourselves. We've met people
Hmm.
from other countries at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
We've, you know, WrestleMania 22, we destroyed American Japanese relations with our friend Jeremy, who was talking to the Japanese people behind us and um, only talking Nintendo. But yeah, so I mean, I can see obviously you want to expand, you know, if you're running a smart business, you want to expand as big as you can without over overextending yourself. And I think globally, and maybe this is just the knowledge of or limited knowledge of the rest of the world, but wrestling seems to be a more Americanized product.
Hmm.
And so the major wrestling stars are here in America. So if you can get them over to, and that relates to the NFL too. I know there's the Canadian Football League, but I don't know if Europe has. I mean, I know they have football, but it's
Right.
not football,
Right.
And um, so I think yes, they want to try to expand. And how do you do that? And obviously, like you said, with Taylor Swift being a huge, I don't think the Chiefs played overseas this season. I think it's mainly the teams that don't draw well at home.
Yeah.
Most of the part, like, or the Jaguars do it because I believe one that they haven't drawn well previously in the past seasons. Also, um, the cons that own the Jaguar, who also own AEW, own football state teams in Europe. And
Right.
so I don't know if they play at those stadiums that they own or if they're playing somewhere else. But that probably also helps with the marketing and with the promotion. But yeah, yes, definitely. I think what I'm trying to say is expansion good.
Expansion, good. As we kind of wind things down, we've talked about Taylor Swift dating a WWE or AEW superstar. What influence or what impact would that have? Let's flip it, because as we've seen over the last, I don't know, decade or so, women's wrestling has become increasingly more popular. We know that there are several relationships in AEW and in WWE amongst the stars there, and then even commingling with AEW stars dating or married to WWE superstars or TNA. All of that
Mhm.
comes into play. But could a female wrestler uh, be involved with a list celebrity, male celebrity that, or I guess female, it doesn't matter to me, but could we see that kind of change? And what would that bring to the women's movement? Because I think WWE has done a good job after probably years, maybe decades of, pardon my language, shitting the bed with the women's division. Uh,
Hey, let's not talk about Vince McMahon here.
oh God, oh, I didn't. I should have chose my words more carefully. That was not intended. But if we uh, would it bring any extra, because I do think there are other companies that could bolster and use
Mhm.
some work in their women's division. But would a male influence, or would a male celebrity being involved in women's wrestling give it any sort of boost or any sort of extra credibility? And I use credibility kind of loosely here.
Yeah. Does Tom Cruise need a girlfriend or wife?
Maybe. I don't. Yeah, probably.
um, no, I do think yes. If you're someone with some stature, that is going to be showing up at award shows or red carpet premieres or something. Obviously, there would be some bit of a rub, but I don't, I think it goes into the media too. How does the media feel? And then will the media um, promote it? If let's say just use Tom Cruise and Bailey right now, just for two names that I don't think will ever date, but just for sake of argument, um, if they if Bailey showed up with Tom Cruise at the premiere of Mission Impossible 87 or um, something, would the media care, or would they only focus on Tom because it's wrestling, and wrestling doesn't have the same
Well,
significance or the same.
as you said that, it jogged my memory, and we did have Stacy Keebler dating George Clooney for a minute. And
Which
I
again, no one
remember.
cared about. It wasn't a big deal. But then again, Clooney is not he's not a recluse, but he's not someone that you see out all the time.
I remember, like, this was back when WSIL was airing Entertainment Tonight, so the news would end
Mhm.
and Entertainment Tonight would come on, and I can remember a couple of stories where they would mention, the former wrestler Stacy Keibler or the former
Mhm.
WWE diva Stacy Keibler. But yeah, it wasn't anything like that. But I also wonder with Logan Paul, what if instead of becoming a wrestler, which I think he is probably uh, the best celebrity to transition into the ring. Um, what if instead
Bad
of
Bunny might have something to say about that.
Boo?
Bad Bunny.
Eh, I'd have to see more Bad Bunny to put him up higher, but he is good too.
Mm.
But what if, or we can use Bad Bunny in the example here. What if instead of
Well, and because Bad Bunny was dating a Kardashian, so or a Jenner.
oh really? I don't keep up with the Kardashians.
I only know that I don't even know why I know this, but yeah, I don't know if they still are, but at one point, yes, he was
Oh, interesting.
one of the Jenner. I don't know which one, but
And,
yeah, and that's the thing is like with as popular as they are, and as popular as Bad Bunny is. But
yeah.
again, I think they got together after his Royal Rumble and WrestleMania matches, and
Oh, okay.
he
Oh,
hasn't really done, other than Backlash last year, he hasn't been around
yeah.
the wrestling world. So it might be different if he did come back for WrestleMania this year.
Yeah, because then also, then becomes the expectation. We'll go back to Taylor here for a minute.
Mhm.
If she were dating, and I'll just use Austin Theory as the example, um, would there be then that expectation of her getting in the ring or getting physical? Because we look and see, because obviously we don't expect her to put on pads and go tackle somebody on the field,
Mhm.
but I think anytime there's any sort of celebrity involvement, uh, or spousal involvement in wrestling, we have that expectation as fans, not you and me specifically, but fans in
Mhm.
general think, oh well, this is going to lead to a match, and sometimes it does lead to a match that we don't need to see, like
Mhm.
her example having a match, or and on those celebrity realms. But I wonder, because I couldn't imagine, and again, I don't know anything about Taylor Swift other than what I hear in the media secondhand or third hand, but I couldn't see that kind of, her being a physical uh, kind of person in that regard.
Mhm.
Whereas there are other celebrities out there, Amy Schumer, yeah, I could see her kind of going in and body slamming a couple dudes or something, but Taylor, I'm not so sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think Taylor also wouldn't want to take the risk of being injured.
Hmm.
And, especially if she was in the middle of a tour like she
Right.
is currently.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things with wrestling where, anytime someone gets involved, you're like, oh, let's see them get physical. And it's like, no, we don't need,
Right.
not everyone has to get physical if they show up on a show.
Yeah.
And, sometimes the rub of them being there is just that. But, um, and I don't know why this popped in my head, but like with Jon Stewart,
Oh yeah.
being involved with the show and coming out at SummerSlam and costing John Cena a match, like, and granted, I know it wasn't Jon Stewart, host of Daily Show, height of his fame. It was a few
Yeah.
years past that, but even that, I don't think got much traction
Right.
in the media. And so, I think if, I guess, to sum everything up that we've been saying, if it's going to be someone coming in and getting publicity for wrestling, it's going to have to be like, probably like a Taylor Swift or someone high up on that level of where there's a story about them seemingly every day in
Right.
the media. Because if it's just someone somewhat casual, again, I think it's just the wrestling, not stereotype, but the view vantage point that most people have of wrestling. You
Hmm.
know, so
Well, and I want to save this question for later, but I want to plant the seeds now because we'll talk more about this celebrity in a future episode. But for me, as a young fan in the early 80s,
Mhm.
Cyndi Lauper came on the scene. And I knew Cyndi Lauper, hearing her on the radio. I had
Mhm.
her cassettes, and I bought the 45s of all the individual tracks that came out. And I'm trying to remember, and I can do more research before we do the episode, but uh, you know, was it chicken or the egg with Cyndi Lauper? Was I a fan before Cyndi Lauper got
Mm,
involved, or was I a fan after she got? I can't remember that, and I'd have to go back and look at the timeline. But I'm also trying to remember. I was 9 or 10 years old, so I don't remember. Was she mainstream enough where she was on Entertainment Tonight, in its infancy?
mm,
Was she part of that public talk? I can remember Madonna obviously being kind of controversial and everybody talking about her. I don't remember Cyndi Lauper in that regard of people talking about her, but
yeah.
certainly opening up the doors and to get on MTV and become a bit more mainstream with the WWF product at that time. So to your point, I think between her and Mr. T and kind of really helping get that foundation built for that first WrestleMania and showing that, yeah, celebrities are involved in this and it's not all carny. But I still think even 35, 40 years later now, there is still that perception. And I don't know that that will ever change. But I do find it curious that is Cyndi Lauper the equivalent of what Taylor Swift would be to the business today if Taylor?
Mm,
I don't think so. I think Taylor is in again a stratosphere of her own.
um,
But had Michael Jackson gotten involved back in the day, maybe things would have been different. I don't know.
I'm gonna bite my tongue for my sarcastic comment that I was going to make. I'll tell you off air, but um, yeah, no, and that's the thing. Looking at celebrity involvement in the early days of WrestleMania and even in WCW, you know,
Mhm.
I mean, did people really flock to watch WCW when RoboCop showed up?
Right, right.
You know, um, eh, and I think especially I'm trying to think of all the celebrities that have appeared at WrestleMania, and I feel like I don't know why my mind keeps going back to like 9, 10, and 11, but those were like, I mean, other than Jonathan Taylor Thomas, who was
Mhm.
kind of popular at the time, it was kind of like either B list or past their prime, like Burt Reynolds showing up,
Right.
and you could pretty much tell that he was there just to collect a paycheck. Like
Sure.
he was not, enthused about it. And even Jenny McCarthy and Pamela Anderson showed up, but they, I think had social media been around, they would have been checking their Twitter feed more than
Yeah.
paying attention to the match. So I think you're going to need some high level star who actually is interested in, you know, and that's the thing with Taylor Swift. When the season first started and she started showing up at games, I was skeptical. I was like, okay, I don't know her to be a big football fan, but and even some of her reactions are kind of like more like, does she know what's going on, or is she just reacting because everyone else is reacting? And so, I don't know, but maybe she has picked it up. I heard she has a good blitz defense read, and um, has been playing Madden 24 on the PS5 while she's in the air flying to Japan and back. Um, I don't know. But yeah, I just think it has to be, if you're going to use a celebrity in wrestling to get eyeballs, it has to be someone huge. And it can't be, going back, we've mentioned Snooki a couple times on this show. I think her being involved, even though she had probably up to that point one of the best celebrity matches in the show
Mhm.
in WrestleMania history, like I don't think people were looking at her and hopefully this makes sense, in a positive light.
Mm.
It was more like, oh, that's that reality star that, it's like her and wrestling go together because it's for the,
Yeah.
you
Lowbrow.
know,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Interesting. All right. All right. Well, anything else you want to add before we wrap up and put a bow on this week's episode?
um, no, I'm just looking forward to this road to WrestleMania. As cynical as I am, as skeptical as I am with the whole thing being the way that WWE originally had planned, I have to say, at least I'm intrigued as to where we go and how we end up there. And that's something that I don't think has been, present in a lot of road to WrestleManias. This one seems to have more potholes. So
Hmm.
I guess it's fitting that they're driving in Philadelphia. So,
Which, yeah, speaking of Philadelphia too, and we'll talk more about this on the WrestleMania episode, but I want to put another prediction out there that Jason Kelsey will be involved in WrestleMania 40 in some capacity as well.
And that's where I think if WWE was smart,
Mhm.
they would, if they can't get Taylor and Travis, then you go for the next best thing.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that as we get further down the road to WrestleMania. Maybe things will be announced, but again, my predictions for WrestleMania as we record 8 weeks out is Roman and Rock eventually wrestle, with Roman being the babyface, and we see an appearance of some sort from Jason Kelsey on either night one or night two of WrestleMania 40.
And what's your Super Bowl prediction?
My Super Bowl prediction, I am going to go with the Chiefs, but I do not think there's going to be a proposal on the field as Swifties and some others have speculated. So,
All right. Who's got the best commercial?
um, I'm going to go with State Farm. I don't know. What do you think?
You know, I was just watching a YouTube video yesterday of a guy who went through like the last 25 years of commercials and
Mhm.
kind of like broke them down and talked about how commercials have gotten less interesting over the last few years. I think part of that is because they release the commercials ahead of time,
Right.
so you don't have the the specialness of them. But um, I'm trying to think of what I've read is going to be there. I'm gonna say Doritos, just out of Doritos always seems to always put up a good commercial. And right now, I guess in Vegas, the Luxor, which is the Pyramid
Mhm.
Hotel, one whole side of that is a Dorito chip.
Ah,
So
branding, baby. Hey,
yeah.
I had a Super Bowl last year for the college I work at. We did a Super Bowl, a local Super Bowl
Mm.
commercial, but yeah, it didn't do didn't do much. So,
Mm.
but it was fun. So, who do you think is going to win the game?
I'm gonna go 49ers.
Okay.
I think,
Well,
and
you're a California guy. I'm a Missouri guy, so or originally Missouri guy. So,
I guess
there you
so.
go.
Yeah. Too bad the Chiefs play in Kansas. Apparently,
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that story, but I'll tell you later.
Yes, yes. Well, everyone, for Chad Smart, I am Kevin Huntsberger. Thanks for listening and or watching this week's episode. Have a great week and enjoy. Well, the Super Bowl's over, but enjoy the week of wrestling that is ahead, as well as the road to WrestleMania.
And the USFL kicks off next week or in 2 weeks.
Woohoo!